So I am, I'm called Addy. I'm going to be talking about, well, firstly, my avatar. How crazy is that? I look like, you gave everybody like amazing superpowers, and I'm the guy who's going, please don't take a photo of me while I have the headset on. Anyway, I'm talking about this thing, SNAFU. And I don't know if anybody knows what the term is, but it comes from an Americanism. It's from around Vietnam, and it's a military kind of casual slang term, which is situation normal, all fucked up. And what that was is someone would radio in, they go, how you doing? Well, it's SNAFU. And that was a good thing. That meant that that's status quo. Status quo is crazy and chaotic. So what I'm going to talk about is not VR or anything like that, although this does feed into a lot of that. This is a lot more of a theory around chaos. And I'm going to talk about some examples from the mill's past, and then how chaos has been a collaborator in some of the work and solutions that come out of that, and then a bit about that also as a creative. So, firstly, a bit about myself. I've had a very varied background. I've come from advertising, design, illustration. I'm a musician as well. I was in a content business and a digital business. And so I've always kind of stumbled into different things, and I think I've made life quite hard for myself. And there's a reason for that as well, which I'll realize when I get into a bit of this stuff, but I'll talk about that as we go along. Before we go any further, I'm going to show you a bit of, and I'm going to talk over it, so if there's music, just dial it down a bit. This is the Mill's showreel. Does anybody know who the Mill is? They're a global company. They're based in London, New York, Chicago, and LA. And they started their career really out of doing visual effects. And that was about making the impossible real. That's about, they would work with the best directors and agencies in the world. And the entire reason why you would go to the Mill is that you had an idea to do something, you didn't know how to do it, and you would come to them and they would figure out how to do it. So by the very nature, that makes them problem solvers. And one of the first things about chaos and our lives and as creatives and technologists or anything that we do, the moment you realize that you're good at problem solving, you become a problem magnet. So if you think you can escape chaos, you can't. So, yeah, I'm not going to, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to probably sprint through this. And then I'll probably slow down towards the end when I know that I've made my time all right. So yeah, so SNAFU is chaos. And why do we have so much chaos in our industry? And I think that there's a lot of reasons. I'm going to talk about it from the Mill's point of view, and I know that the principle is true for most creative industries. The reason why we have a lot of chaos on the production end of things is that we are pretty much where all the things converge of high expectations, wanting the impossible, and then a crazy deadline. And we're at the end of the process. So things are going to go wrong, but also you're going to get amazing things out of it, amazing innovation. And the other thing is that our industry, and this entire industry, is hell-bent on having the new next thing. So what is bigger than before? What is more interesting? What is newer? And we've seen it today. It's gone beyond just making pretty pictures. Now we're making actual things, new and fast, and the appetite for it out there is insane. So trying to keep up with that means that we're innovating at a rate that we can't quite constantly beta test our way through. And that's a reason for chaos. And then the third thing is that we are predisposed to be chaotic. And what I mean by that, if I look at my own process, I know that I do my best work when I'm under pressure. So what I inevitably start to do is I make pressure for myself so I do better things, which is terrible. Chaos is everywhere. I'm going to use this first example because it's technology, it's software, and it's old software, but quite interesting. I don't know how many people know about Massive. Massive is a piece of software that was written around the times of Lord of the Rings, and it was designed to create, it's one of the first kind of artificial intelligence pieces for animation. And what it was designed to do was create crowds of people. You would want to fill a stadium or have a war scene, you can't pay a lot of extras, you would build loads of crowds, and you would program into it this thing called fuzzy logic. And what that is an approximation of human behavior, and that's what I love about this example, because it's like looking in a mirror. Anything that a human touches will go a little bit weird. There'll be a bit of some personality or something that goes into it, or some glitch, or some projection of your weird psychology. Whatever it is, it's not always going to be pure and safe, and that's not a bad thing. So here's some examples of some massive software tests that have just gone horribly wrong. And I just love the visualization of it, because here's the thing that was designed. And the way that Massive is designed is that it's designed around so that you will have, there's parameters. So certain characteristics of what you wanted to do, then mixed in with other behavioral things, and then stresses, just like real life. If you get into kind of storytelling theory, there's a fantastic thing, which is that if you want to write great personalities and characters, I mean, that just feels like my everyday. If you want to write great characters into stories, write really well-developed characters and then put them under pressure. That is the key to writing anything. And you can see it happening in a lot of things. Now, there's this wonderful example, and I'll whip through a few more of these because they are just funny. I don't know what that was a test for, but I found it and I had to use it. Passive-aggressive technology, just to show how even when you don't mean to, and you know, technology is written to make life easier and also to be kind of understood and robust. It's there to save us from ourselves. And here's a great example. So we were doing a job for a big sportswear brand, which I can't talk about because there are things called NDAs and snipers. And what we had to do was fill out a stadium with this crowd of massive characters. One of the crowd, like at the far end of the stadium, was holding up a big flag. On the flag was the client's logo. So the client asked, can we have the logo bigger? And so we go, yes, you can. And we made it bigger. So they asked for it to be bigger again. We go, yeah, sure, you can. And this went on for a bit, and what we eventually got was this. Which is such a lovely example of, hey, fuck you. It's chaos. So let's reframe chaos. Let's look at it in a way that isn't just all negative. Because like I said, so if I look at my own personal experience of it, so I make my life really hard because I know it's a fight or flight response. You've got to remember that a lot of how we respond to chaos and threatening situations and pressure is about survival. It's about being able to move past that obstacle, and we're built for it. We are, like, fundamentally within us, we're built to deal with high stress. It's not fantastic, but we are built for it. And you can get more out of it than just that. You know, life should be better than just this constant, like, you get the brief, oh my goodness, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be holy shit, what am I doing? You know, you can't just keep doing that because it's just going to make you a nervous wreck. And so let's look at, from duress comes great art. Some of the best music, books, film, poetry, art is made under really trying conditions. And you have to ask, like, why is that? Why is it that the album of the band, that it's their first album, they've got no money, they're eating beans on toast all the time, they're touring around the world, sleeping on sofas, why is that album so much more visceral and profound and have so much more meaning in it than when they're 5 albums later writing it on a yacht? There's a reason for that. It brings out the best in people, and it's survival. So, again, there's another lovely example here, and I think the first thing is that we all know, and I'm going to probably say a lot of things here that you know. I mean, we all know. But it's nice to look at it and try and reframe it and try and make friends with it a bit, rather than having chaos and stress be your enemy. Try and find ways to be okay with it. There's a great example of things in our industry, in the production industry. They always say don't work with children or animals. And like everybody who's done a shoot with any of those has a story. I've got a story that's going to beat all those. It's fantastic. I don't know if it's strictly true, but sometimes it's better to be more interesting than right. And I think the principle works. There is, this is the one about a monkey. So animals are notoriously tricky, and there were a handful of stories that I could brought forward for this, but it's really anecdotal. This one's fantastic, and I heard it from the guy who promised me that he heard it from the guy who was in on the shoot. Again, I'm going to be very vague about this because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. So what had to happen on the shoot was that it was a shoot with an ape, with a monkey, a small monkey, like a small chimp. And when the animal handler, so on these shoots you'll have a handler who's a trainer. When he brought the chimp on stage, well, into the set, he had it in a cage and he said to everybody on set, listen, don't mess with the monkey. Don't tease it, don't be cute, don't hassle it, it's a bit of a prima donna, don't mess with the monkey. And so everybody heard that except for one guy. There's always that one guy. And he was like, okay, and he was being a bit cute with it. He's like, oh, monkey, monkey, banana, monkey. And the moment that the wrangler let the ape out for his big scene, the monkey runs across the room to the guy who was teasing him, jumps onto his lap, onto his shoulders, wraps his arms and legs around his head, and does what I like to call the reverse twerk. What made it worse was apparently the trainer comes up to the guy and goes, look, don't move, because if we try and pull him off, he's going to rip your face with his nails. You have to let him finish. So, I hope it's true. I really hope it's true. But we've done a lot of work. A lot of our development and our innovation has come out of things like that. So animal replacement is a huge thing, and it's really hard to do with visual effects. And one of the jobs that was our first kind of major breakthrough was this. This is actually a commercial for PETA. And PETA's an animal charity, and what we had to do with this was prove that you no longer need to be forceful, harmful, abusive with animals to get a performance, because you can make them so that they look as real as normal, and that was the job. And so you can already see how all these huge things, and it all comes from problem solving, it all comes from things going so horribly wrong, and on shoots especially, everything's about that one day or that 1 hour or that one take. And there's a lot of money and pressure riding on it. And if you can't get it right, that's why people come to us. So that's led on to more animal work. And this is a fantastic example now. And I think it's so kind of redeeming because we entered it for awards. And, well, firstly, we got complaints from the public saying, how dare you put an animal in a fun fair? And it's not. It's all CG. So yeah, I'm gonna race ahead. The nice thing about chaos is that you make leaps, not steps. And what that means is when you're normally problem solving or working to a brief, we're all very analytical, and we don't always end up at the end straight away. We make iterative steps to get towards it, and it only takes us to the 50th step to realize that there's maybe another way we could have done it. And the lovely thing about chaos is when things go wrong, they go wrong fast. And you have to solve them quickly, and you have to give up that linear thing, and you have to make a leap into something else. That's a gift if you do it right. We'll talk about how to do it right, because to do that, you need to understand the physiology of stress. So I'm going to give this an example. It's a lovely example of the thing that you need to be comfortable with is confident enough and okay enough to know that things will always go wrong, because they will. The more you try and stop things going wrong, and I don't mean like let everything go, let's like light fires in our offices. We're not doing that. What I mean is be okay with knowing that the variables against you are heavy. Things will always go a bit tricky, wrong, and weird, and you need to be okay with the fact that things are going to get chaotic and know that you are built to get through it. This idea of gut feeling is a good example, because the great creators, the people who've been around for ages and had so much chaos, they know that actually if you're comfortable with that, with a lot of experience comes a lot of improvisation. So you can be there for the moment when something goes so wrong that you can go, okay, this is an opportunity, and find the way to work with it. This is a lovely old commercial. It was done for its Guinness snail race. Abbott Mead Vickers BBDO, and the late, great Frank Brudgeon as a director. Now, what's wonderful about this is it's a big commercial. So there's a lot of money on it. It was meant to be an outdoor shoot. If you haven't seen it, it's all about a snail race. And I'll show you basically what happened was there was a storm, and it literally washed the entire set away. And rather than freak out, what the director did was, on the spot, decided that he would rebuild the set indoors, which is no big deal. He then decided to film it and make it part of the story. So you'll see there's some great moments in this. That's the actual storm. And that's them rebuilding the set indoors. Now, you can't script something as nice as that. That storm shot is amazing, and he just worked with it and it became part of the aesthetic of the new piece. It's wonderful. So anyway, racing on. Sorry, initially this presentation is normally quite long, and I've tried to try and hack at it a bit to kind of get it working while still making sense. So in order to be comfortable and okay with stress and okay with chaos, so that you can embrace it and be all right with it and get the best out of it, you need to understand the science of it. Now, there's there's two kinds of stress. There's good and bad. And they're the same stress, but it's how your body reacts to it. So there's an actual chart. And this is an adaptation of an early 1940s chart, but this is in the 1979. And we've re-illustrated it, so don't worry, that wasn't the Nixon P practitioner. It's not his. This is our reworking of it as an illustration. But what he charts here really well is and you'll all relate to this, but there's a certain point, if you have no stress, if there's nothing you're worried about or scared of, there's no motivation. And you'll understand this if you do what I do. Like what I do is I go on holiday and I say, I'm going to go on holiday and I'm going to work on that project that I haven't worked on for ages, that I really want to do, that book or that illustration or that script. And I never do it because there's no deadline. And without stress, without fear, you're not motivated to achieve. You don't kick into gear. So there's an optimum area where you're under quite a bit of stress and you're working really well. You're like making decisions quickly, you're being smart, you're at your best, you're fit. Now the problem is if you keep up that level of stress, eventually you get fatigued because we're only human. And you're going to get tired. And the moment that happens, the chaos doesn't go away, it carries on, but you then get beaten up by it to the point of exhaustion. And the problem is what this does is, that's a subtle adaptation, it's giving a shit versus feeling shit. And it's true, because what happens is when you're under great stress, so like traumatic stress or some kind of a fight or flight response, what actually happens to your brain is that the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex, which is the more evolved evolutionary part of your brain, which actually is more in control of things like being able to be analytical about your emotions, ordering your thoughts, working memory, planning, decision-making, that shuts down. So that shuts down, which then gets you to your more kind of primitive areas of your brain, which actually are about very task-specific things. Now, what also happens, especially if you're fearful, if there's a big fright that comes with it, like me and every deadline, your body gets pumped full of hormones as well. So now you're not thinking straight, you're not rational, you're very emotional, and you're pumped full of these hormones. So you're going to end up feeling really terrible, and that's why when you're under a lot of stress, you feel like you are so bad at what you do. You feel like you're so out of control. And there's another thing that happens, which is tunnel vision, which is this idea of when you're dealing with that part of your brain that is problem solving, you're no longer analytical. You don't think about, is this the right problem to be solving? You're just solving the thing in front of you, which is why, like I've had this before, where I'll spend half a day just working on a bit of a graphic for something that has nothing to do with how big the rest of the work is that I have to do, and I can't stop until I get it right. So that's that. There's also, there's proof of, but this is more like kind of around war zones and things like that, how parts of your brain actually shrink under stress and pressure. So that's going to happen regardless, but if you know about it, you will know when you're reacting badly and you're irrational. So the idea here is to try and make chaos your gym. And I'm going to move fast now because I can see I'm way behind. So your gym instructor's an asshole, but he gets the best out of you. So what we know about chaos is that it's only when we are really engaged and frightened that we are this evolutionary version of ourselves, that we are at our fighting fittest, which is brilliant. So get comfortable with that and embrace it. Embrace the things that come out of chaos. Passion is the best currency, and what I mean by that is the thing that helps beyond anything else. I know it is gross. How dare those coins kiss? Diversity, people. So the thing is like passion, like how that naive optimism that you had when you were a young student. That's the thing that gets you over the chaos and all the pressure. And think about it. It's just like romantic love. So romantic love, you'll be dating someone you think they're so amazing, but their breath stinks. You don't notice. You don't notice. They're still amazing. There are so many things that we're forgiving of because we love and because we're passionate. And remember that, because when you're burnt out, the only thing to get you out of burnout is to get back to a place that you're doing it not for anything else, but you're doing it for yourself because you care again. So there's a lovely example of that, which is, I don't know if everybody's seen the Chemical Brothers music video, but it's wonderful, and it's shot by Dom and Nick. And I'm going to whip past this because the next one's more important than this. But basically, the point of this is that we take on a lot of projects just purely out of passion because we learn things from them, and we will do them not because they've got good budgets, we'll do them because they know that from them we get innovation because we're passionate about it, because someone comes to us with a great vision that we can't say no to because we listen to it and we fall in love with it. It's an important thing. The Zen of chaos is my last point, so I'll just ease back a bit. Don't shoot me. So the Zen of chaos is this idea of, in judo. So judo is a martial art that isn't about fighting force with force. It's about leveraging the force of your opponent against them. And there's a principle there which is amazing, which is when things are chaotic and you can roll with it and you can be open to it and and you can celebrate what might come out of it, there are some big wins in that. There's the opportunity to be clear thinking when you can make those leaps and when everything is up for grabs. And it's true, even for your clients, when that's happening, it's like getting a whole new brief and you can make it better. A really good example of that in our industry is the automotive industry. This is a thing that automotive industry is just like sports stars. When you're shooting a TV commercial with a car, you don't always get the latest car, but they're shooting the commercial for that car. There might be one of those cars in the whole world, and you need to get it to your location to shoot it. So very often what happens, and this is a good example, the car in the finished piece wasn't even built yet, and they had to shoot it from that car there. So what we did was we took an old model, put tracking markers on it, and recreated the entire car in CG. So that's kind of cool. So now we know we can kind of make CG cars out of nothing. The thing that then was interesting is someone then decided, well, why don't we just take the problem and double down on it and make it really great? So what we've now developed, and it's just been launched, is a scaffolding car. This is the Blackbird. Now what this car is essentially, it's a scaffolding-based car. It's got adjustable wheelbases. It has tracking markers all over it. It's got electric engines, so you can set it to any car out there. It shoots 360 video and HDR data, so that we can get accurate reflections of the environment around us. And you can replace it with any car you want. And that's a really nice example, because that you would never have gotten to if it wasn't for all the stuff going wrong with the cars in the first place. And it just changes it totally. That's me. You don't have to buzz me. I'm pretty much done. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of recapping stuff there, basically, on all the different things about chaos. But most importantly, let's make some regrets. Thank you very much.